Well, I think you're going to be disappointed, Welly,
No,
but I don't think of it as a muse. I don't have a goddess in mind that I'm thinking of that channels this creativity, but one of the distinguishing characteristics of creative people is that they are very productive. So they do a lot, they make a lot, they think a lot, they write a lot. And because they do so much, they have more options. So they'll do some things that might be really foolish, have involved foolish decisions, or maybe are dead ends. But they'll all, because they try so many things, so many choices in their work, they discover what's possible, and they are quick enough to follow good leads. And then if you think about doing that with time, that's really important. But God, I think the idea of going into the studio and think, well, I'm going to be creative today, or I have to make some creative choices here. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine doing that. I just can't imagine thinking on that level. I've been very busy the last months, and just kind of going as fast as I can, pushing myself to finish things and to move on, because there's so much I want to do right now. And I thought, creativity, God, what am I going to say? I don't know what it is, but it involves choices. It involves making choices, and it involves having a feel for what your resources are, what your choices are. You know, one thing is that you don't always have to worry about, especially in clay, it's very forgiving in that way. You don't have to worry about whether you're doing something creative or not, because we have this, you can go in and out of it. Not everything you make has to be creative. I mean, you don't have to put that burden on yourself. Because if you each time say, well, I have to do something really important now, it's just, God, what a clutch. I mean, I remember once I did a series of black bowls where they were each really three-dimensional paintings that were inside of a bowl, and I liked the idea that your head could be looking in, and then you'd have this black matte skin on the outside. Well, and then I had a softness in the form because I didn't want it to just be half of a sphere. It took me 5 years to figure out that form. Because I knew the quality I wanted. When I would go to throw it, I just could not get the proportions. And I couldn't instruct myself or find the instructions to make it the way I was sort of seeing it in my mind. And part of that was I hadn't resolved exactly how I wanted it. And so there's this back and forth with what you can do and what you think you're looking for. And resolving those two is not easy. And if I had to set a timeline for myself to resolve that, I think it would not have been particularly successful, because I would have had to accept whatever I came up with. Whereas what I tended to do was work on that a little bit, that would get fired, and then other things would be going on also at the same time. And so you try that, see how that works, and then and maybe the next day you're working on some other project. So you have more than one idea going at once. So I'm kind of talking to myself and talking to the work and listening to the work. I find ceramics to be an incredibly lively area to work in. I know objectively it's just mud and just, things that are made and put in a kiln, and then, can either last 5,000 years or drop and smash. But it just seems very, very animated and alive once the piece is started. If I look ahead, I think, oh, I've got some ideas of how I want to change this and that and new things I want to try. But if I look back, even though I've worked in industry, I've worked on various series, abstract, figurative, I've made functional one-of-a-kind pots, multi-part pieces, I look back and I can see very similar qualities in all those pieces, a personality there. So in some ways, maybe I haven't changed that much. Maybe we all only have 5 or 6 sentences and we keep rotating those. But when I look to the future, I don't feel that that's what's going to happen. But so far, that's always what happened. I think one does do things and sometimes get very disappointed with, let's say, strategies, or, you always have this resolution for the artist, the process of making the piece is so revelatory, and then the piece is done. I tend to work in a more risky way, and many times there are really disappointing characteristics of the finished work. And so then it becomes an issue of, do you want to take your poor decisions out into the public? And that can be difficult. In a practical sense, that can be difficult because there are things that you're not happy with and you feel maybe embarrassed or just feel bad because I guess it's obvious that you must think that the piece reflects something that's really not true to you. And so you don't like to see it out there. Well, then you have the choice of not putting it out or, saying this is what I've produced and it's uneven in quality. People, they're very good artists who take both strategies. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but that is an issue. And I would say most of the time for most artists, one's final work is not the ideal of our idea. It just kind of is part of the territory, and sometimes that can be disappointing. Mm-hmm. I think that there are good ideas all over the place. So ideas are cheap. Maybe not grand, one-of-a-century ideas, but the rest of them are pretty cheap. And so then the question is, well, how can you resolve that to making a finished piece that other people can enjoy? I don't really think about that when I work, but ultimately that lives as a work, as an object. Now that's getting a little different with all the installations and virtual work, that the questions are changing a little bit, but I'm still working in the material world for the most part. It's compared to when I started in the field in the 60s, there's so many options that a person can follow. And it's much easier to be true to yourself and just go in the direction wherever things lead you. I mean, when I first went on to graduate school, for instance, to make a figurative sculpture would have just been unheard of. I mean, just nobody would consider doing that. It's just ridiculous, to make have a sense like that one could or could not do something. It's just really silly. I think that it's a less judgmental world, and so when artists see each other's work, I think it's like getting introduced to somebody and saying, oh, well, who are you? What is this? And maybe since we're practitioners, we also look and see, well, what is this? What is the language here? What am I reading from this piece? Because that's an issue for us, to know what you actually see when you look at something. That's something that at least I keep grappling with it. And then ultimately you're also somewhat selfish. You want to say, well, is there anything for me here? Is there anything that I can learn? Does this change how I see things? And I find that usually it does not, but the backdoor influence is very important. I'm not ever looking to be influenced directly by somebody, but the backdoor influence from what you see about what you see and know I think is incredibly important. I don't think that artists necessarily have to be responsible to making their work literate to the public. In the same way that every field has a range of people working in it. Some are more the explainers, some are more the researchers, the cutting-edge researchers. And to ask one person to do all those things is not always possible. So there's no reason why a physicist working in some extraordinary problem that's going to take him the rest of his life feels that he has to do work that he can explain to a third grader. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so it's the same way in all fields, and art is one of them. So some visual artists their work may be very obtuse, very difficult to understand, and it's not till you hear or read about their intent that you can understand it. And maybe some pieces we will never fully understand or appreciate the choices that they've made, because there will always be those who kind of stretch what people are doing, and is it art, or is it art because they call it's art, or does it become art later because people appreciate it? That's we don't have that responsibility as a field for all of us to be explainers. Then there will be those who will be wonderful at translating what these artists do and answering questions that the layperson might have, or let's say somebody who's introduced to a field. And they're very important too, because they're the conduit. I never anticipated that I would be doing work like I'm doing now, but I'm finding that I'm very aware as I finish them that I just keep going until it seems like it's done. And I think I did that with the pots too when I was making pottery. It was just a shorter time span, so I wasn't as aware of it.
You mean throwing?
I was throwing functional, one-of-a-kind functional pieces. And the same thing, again, you begin something, and then that piece takes on a personality. I think for many artists, it's almost like it's alive. And then you keep having conversations with it and trying things, and it's your hand and the hand of the material, the characteristics natural to the material that go together, and so you take that walk together, and then at some point, you're done.